Hello viewers, Namaskar. I welcome you all to a very special on the new Education Policy 2020. It's a privilege for all of us to have our Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Nageshwar Rao as the resource speaker for today's session. So I welcome you to this session. Professor Rao is a renowned management teacher. He is known for his educational leadership. At present, he is the Vice Chancellor of Indira Gandhi National Open University. He is in charge of as Director of Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Simla. Also in charge Director General of Hindi Directorate. He has served as the Vice Chancellor of Uttar Pradesh Rajasi Tandon Open University, also as Vice Chancellor of Uttarakhand Open University, Haldwani. He is a renowned expert in the field of open and distance learning and also online education. His involvement in the framework of NEP-2020 is well known across the country. His leadership acumen has taken IGNOU to new heights in terms of providing equitable and quality higher education both nationally and internationally. So today we are privileged to him as our resource speaker, and he will be talking to us on the new Education Policy 2020 and the reforms in higher education. As most of us already know that new Education Policy 2020 has come into picture on 29th July 2020. It is resting on 5 pillars, that is affordability, accessibility, quality, equity and accountability in order to provide continuous learning. Higher education plays a major role in the entire education system as India is moving towards the digital economy and a online based education society. So higher education reforms in line with new education policy plays a major role. As our Vice Chancellor is involved in policy framework formulation, we will be very happy to listen to him on various aspects of NEP 2020 and the reforms of higher education. Sir, we will be listening to your lecture, then we will be taking few question answers. All our viewers are requested to post their questions on the Swayamprabha live portal. Sir will be completing his lecture, then he will be responding to the queries. Sir, it's over to you.
नमस्कार। राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति 2020 शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में एक क्रांतिकारी परिवर्तन है और पूरे देश में और अन्य देशों में भी इस नीति के बारे में, इस नीति के क्रियान्वयन के बारे में कई जिज्ञासाएं हैं। विश्वविद्यालय अनुदान आयोग ने यह 6 दिन का अभिमुखीकरण कार्यक्रम आपके लिए तैयार किया है। इसमें लाइव सेशन के साथ साथ स्टडी मटेरियल, वीडियोस, डिस्कशंस और परीक्षा, सारी चीज़ों का प्रावधान रखा है। और भारत सरकार के जो 3 प्रमुख पोर्टल्स हैं, समर्थ पोर्टल जिसमें आप रजिस्ट्रेशन करते हैं, स्वयं पोर्टल जिसमें वीडियो और मटेरियल, सॉफ्ट कॉपी ऑफ द मटेरियल उपलब्ध है, ई कंटेंट्स, और स्वयं प्रभा जिसके द्वारा हम आपसे बातचीत कर रहे हैं। मुख्य रूप से इस बातचीत का आशय यह है कि राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति के क्रियान्वयन में यदि कोई बाधाएं आ रही हों तो उस पर हम लोग बातचीत करें। यह एक ऐसी नीति है जिसके क्रियान्वयन से सभी को लाभ है, अध्यापकों को, छात्रों को, शिक्षण संस्थानों को, शिक्षा की गुणवत्ता को, शिक्षा की पहुंच को, हर तरह से यह संपूर्ण शिक्षा व्यवस्था को बेहतर बनाने का एक बहुत बड़ा प्रयास है। इसमें हम सब अपनी अपनी संस्थानों में जाकर के उन प्रयासों को करने का प्रयास कर सकते हैं। अगर आप राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति के कुछ प्रमुख शब्दों की ओर ध्यान दें, ऑनलाइन और डिजिटल एजुकेशन, हमने पहले भी बताया कि ये जो डिजिटल एजुकेशन है इसी का हम लोग प्रयोग कर रहे हैं आज। स्वयं और स्वयं प्रभा, इन दोनों साधनों को भारत सरकार ने 2016 और 17 में शुरू किया था। 2016 में स्वयं और 2017 में स्वयं प्रभा। स्वयं प्रभा के 34 चैनल्स हैं और स्वयं प्लेटफॉर्म पे लगभग 3000 पाठ्यक्रम हैं। ये पाठ्यक्रम 4 क्वाड्रेंट अप्रोच जो म्यूक के हैं उनके आधार पर हैं, यानी ई कंटेंट है, वीडियोस हैं, डिस्कशन फोरम है और अंत में इवैल्यूएशन है। इस सुविधा का लाभ आप अपने घर पे बैठकर भी कर सकते हैं। इंटरैक्टिव होने के कारण हम प्रश्न भी अपने पूछ सकते हैं जिसका जवाब भी आपको देने का प्रयास किया जा रहा है। वैसे तो यह एक महायज्ञ है, इसमें आप और हम एक साथ मिलकर के इनके परिवर्तनों को लागू करने का प्रयास करेंगे। जब हम स्वयं की बात कर रहे हैं, 3000 पाठ्यक्रम उपलब्ध हैं। ये पाठ्यक्रम ह्यूमैनिटीज़, सोशल साइंसेस, मैनेजमेंट, इंजीनियरिंग सभी के हैं। और इसमें सबसे बड़ा फ़ायदा यह है कि किसी एक कोर्स को आप रजिस्टर कराइए और इम्तहान दीजिए और उसका क्रेडिट आपको बाद में क्रेडिट ट्रांसफ़र होगा। ये मूलभूत बात है, इसलिए मैं आपको बताना चाहता हूँ क्योंकि जब अफोर्डेबिलिटी की बात आती है तो ये बहुत ऐसा शैक्षिक प्रयोग है जिसके लाभ हैं। कोर्सेरा की भी बातचीत होती है, उसमें 11 करोड़ लोग जुड़े हुए हैं और हमारे पास इस स्वयं में 3 करोड़ लोग अभी भी जुड़े हुए हैं। और ये जो पाठ्यक्रम है इसको आप करें, निःशुल्क रजिस्ट्रेशन है और डिस्कशन भी कर सकते हैं। कोई एक विषय आप चुन सकते हैं, 2 विषय भी चुन सकते हैं और उनका इम्तहान आपको देना है। एनटीए आपको सर्टिफाई करती है। और नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी का जो पहला बिंदु है, मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी फोकस, हम इसको आसानी से इसका प्रयोग कर सकते हैं। क्योंकि जब हम मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी की बात करते हैं, यानी एक डिसिप्लिन से ज़्यादा डिसिप्लिन, बीए का कोई छात्र है, वो चाहता है फिजिक्स का एक कोर्स पढ़ ले, तो जहाँ वो पढ़ रहा है वहाँ ये संभव नहीं है। वो चाहता है कि अकाउंटिंग का एक कोर्स पढ़ ले जो कॉमर्स में है, बीए के छात्र को ये सुविधा उपलब्ध नहीं है। बीए का छात्र अगर ये चाहता है कि कंप्यूटर्स का एक कोर्स पढ़ ले, ये सुविधा उपलब्ध नहीं है। लेकिन आज स्वयं ने यह अवसर प्रदान किया है कि हम इन किसी भी पाठ्यक्रमों को पढ़ सकते हैं, इम्तहान दे सकते हैं, इम्तहान में पास होकर के इसके क्रेडिट को ट्रांसफ़र भी करा सकते हैं। ये जो क्रेडिट शब्द है ये इस संपूर्ण राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति का मूल है। अभी पिछले माह नेशनल काउंसिल फॉर वोकेशनल एजुकेशन एंड ट्रेनिंग ने नेशनल क्रेडिट फ्रेमवर्क का एक ड्राफ्ट आप सबके सम्मुख प्रस्तुत किया था, जिसमें आपसे अपेक्षा की गई थी कि आप इसमें अपने विचार अभिव्यक्त करें जिससे उसका अंतिम रूप दिया जा सके। क्रेडिट मतलब कोर्स आधारित 10 घंटे, 15 घंटे, 20 घंटे का एक पाठ्यक्रम है जिसको आप पढ़ें, पास हों और उसका परिणाम आपके साथ रहेगा। पढ़ने का माध्यम बहुत आसान है, स्वयं प्रभा। ये जो चैनल पे हम बातचीत कर रहे हैं ये बाद में यूट्यूब पे भी उपलब्ध हो जाएगा। आपकी सुविधा अनुसार एफोर्डेबल, चूँकि संपूर्ण जो 5 या 6 दिन की हम लोग से बातचीत हो रही है ये भी निःशुल्क है और ये ज्ञान का आदान प्रदान है। और आपको अपने संस्थानों में इन अभिनव प्रयोगों को करना है। अगर आपको बीए के कोर्स को मल्टीडिसिप्लिनरी बनाना है और आपने सोच रखा है कि हमें कंप्यूटर का एक कोर्स शामिल करना है, एक कोर्स कॉमर्स का शामिल करना है, एक कोर्स फिजिक्स का शामिल करना है, एक कोर्स जियोलॉजी का शामिल करना है, अगर आपका विवेक ये कहता है कि ये सब आपके बीए के पाठ्यक्रम को मल्टीडिसिप्लिनरी बनाने में मदद करेगा, तो आप किसी का इंतजार मत करिए। केवल बच्चों से कहिए कि वो स्वयं अपने भारत सरकार का पोर्टल है उसमें रजिस्ट्रेशन कराएं। एक कोर्स का, 2 कोर्स का फ्री रजिस्ट्रेशन है। 3 करोड़ से ज़्यादा लोगों ने रजिस्ट्रेशन करा रखा है। 4 क्वाड्रेंट अप्रोच है और उसके बाद डिस्कशन करें और अंत में इम्तहान दे करके, ऑब्जेक्टिव टाइप इम्तहान होते हैं, अगर पास हो गए तो क्रेडिट ट्रांसफर हो जाएगा। पास बहुत लोग होते हैं। उम्र का कोई बंधन नहीं है, एजुकेशनल क्वालिफिकेशंस कोई बंधन नहीं है। हम इसको बार बार इसलिए कह रहे हैं कि ये उपलब्ध संसाधन हमारे पास है, जिसके लिए आपके विश्वविद्यालय, आपके महाविद्यालय में अतिरिक्त शिक्षक, अतिरिक्त क्लासरूम, अतिरिक्त परीक्षा के संसाधन तैयार करने की कोई आवश्यकता नहीं है। मल्टीडिसिप्लिनरी हो गया। अगर आपको होलिस्टिक बनाना है, यानी इसमें स्किल को भी शामिल करना है, करिए, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है। क्योंकि अब नेशनल स्किल डेवलपमेंट कॉरपोरेशन आपके साथ खड़ा है, उच्च शिक्षा के साथ खड़ा है। वो ये कहता है कि आपके पाठ्यक्रमों में स्किल कंपोनेंट को शामिल करिए और उस स्किल का सर्टिफिकेशन के लिए भी एक एजेंसी आ गई, वो भी राष्ट्र की एजेंसी है, अभी हाल ही में क्रिएट हुई, नेशनल काउंसिल फॉर वोकेशनल एजुकेशन एंड ट्रेनिंग। ये दोनों संस्थाएं आपके स्किल कंपोनेंट को जोड़ सकती हैं। मान लिया आपने कहा कि हमारे बीकॉम पाठ्यक्रम में 20% स्किलिंग शामिल करना है। अभी तक 80% या 100% पूरा थ्योरेटिकल था, आपने कहा 20% स्किलिंग शामिल करना है। NCVT भी और NSDC भी, दोनों ही आपकी मदद करेंगे और आपको 20% क्या होना चाहिए वो उसमें शामिल कर सकते हैं। आपको लगा कंप्यूटर का कोई कोर्स शामिल होना चाहिए, मशीन ट्रांसलेशन का कोई कोर्स शामिल होना चाहिए, शामिल हो सकता है। और 20% को उसको शामिल करके आपने कहा हमारा अब ये बीकॉम पाठ्यक्रम इस प्रकार से होगा कि 80% हमारा थ्योरी है, 20% स्किलिंग आ गया। और ये स्किलिंग मनमाना नहीं है, ये स्किलिंग NCVT द्वारा मान्यता प्राप्त है, NSDC द्वारा अनुशंसित है, जो दोनों ही राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर, केंद्रीय स्तर पर संस्थाएं हैं जो स्किल ट्रेनिंग लोगों को प्रोवाइड करा रही हैं। अप्रेंटिसशिप का सपोर्ट हो रहा है। होलिस्टिक एजुकेशन हमें करना है, इसमें भी आपको अतिरिक्त रूप से बहुत कुछ सोचने की आवश्यकता नहीं है, क्योंकि ये संस्थानें लगातार ये कोशिश कर रही हैं। इन्होंने अब तक जो स्किल्स हैं उन स्किल्स को बना करके उसकी एक लिस्ट बना रखी है, उस लिस्ट को देखिए। और कई संस्थानों को प्रायर लर्निंग को भी इन्होंने क्वांटिफाई करने का प्रयास किया है। हमारी जो पाठ्यक्रम होगा वो स्किल ओरिएंटेड हो गया, होलिस्टिक भी हो गया, मल्टीडिसिप्लिनरी भी हो गया। अब आप चाहते हैं कि इसमें क्रेडिट ट्रांसफर हो जाए तो उसके लिए कोई दिक्कत नहीं। बहुत पहले 2016-17 में ही हम लोगों को एक सर्कुलर आया था UGC से कि हम लोगों को क्रेडिट ट्रांसफ़र करने चाहिए। हम लोगों ने उसको एकेडमिक काउंसिल से पास भी करा लिया था, लेकिन क्रियान्वयन में कहीं ना कहीं हम लोग चूक हो गए। सो कर लीजिए, इस क्रेडिट से जुड़ी हुई एक और बात है, एकेडमिक बैंक ऑफ क्रेडिट। यानी बैंक में 5-5 रुपया जमा करने से 5 बार जमा किया तो 25 रुपये हो जाएंगे। उसी प्रकार से इस बैंक में, ये एकेडमिक बैंक है, इसमें आप एक एक कोर्स पास करेंगे, वो कोर्स आपके अकाउंट में जमा हो जाएंगे। और उसके एनकैशमेंट मतलब जब आप 15, 20, 25 कोर्सेज जब पास कर लेंगे तो आपको कोई न कोई संस्थान कोई न कोई डिग्री आपको देगी, एकेडमिक बैंक ऑफ क्रेडिट। अगर किसी वर्तमान संस्था में आप काम कर रहे हैं तो 50% आपकी संस्थान जो डिग्री देगी और बाकी 50% आप बाहर से उन क्रेडिट्स को ले सकते हैं। क्या दिक्कत है इसमें? हम क्रेडिट्स को ले सकते हैं, चाहे वो स्किल के क्रेडिट्स हों, चाहे वो स्वयं के क्रेडिट्स हों। और ये जो क्रेडिट ट्रांसफ़र है ये सारा का सारा आपके बैंक में जमा होगा। और अभी आपका एनकैश नहीं हो रहा तो आपके बैंक अकाउंट में जमा हो जाएगा। पहले हम लोग बीए में एडमिशन लेते थे तो बीए के 3 साल के पाठ्यक्रम पास होने के बाद आपको डिग्री मिलती थी। अगर 20 पाठ्यक्रम है तो 18 पाठ्यक्रम पास हो गए, बाकी 2 आप पास नहीं हो पाए, तो आपका सारा का सारा प्रयास बेकार हो जाता था। लेकिन अभी ऐसा नहीं है। 18 आपने पास कर लिए हैं तो 18 आपके अकाउंट में जमा हो जाएंगे। 2 आप बाद में कर लीजिएगा, बाद में जुड़ जाएंगे। 18 पाठ्यक्रमों के पास होने का जो प्रयास है वो निरर्थक नहीं होगा। इसका रजिस्ट्रेशन शुरू हो चुका है। संस्थानों को निर्देश दिया जा चुका है कि वे अपने छात्रों का रजिस्ट्रेशन कराएं। अभी मई में ही ये सर्कुलर इशू हुआ था और जो हमारे पास जुलाई तक के आंकड़े हैं, 32 लाख बच्चों का ऑलरेडी रजिस्ट्रेशन हो चुका है। यानी उनका बैंक अकाउंट खुल गया है, एकेडमिक बैंक अकाउंट खुल गया है। आप जो जो पास करते जाएंगे उस अकाउंट में क्रेडिट होता जाएगा। और जब आपको लगा कि 18, 72 क्रेडिट या 66 क्रेडिट जो भी हो गए हो, उस पाठ्यक्रम की मान्यता के अनुरूप आप उस कैश करा लीजिए, फिर आपको एक डिग्री मिल जाएगी और बाकी बचे हुए क्रेडिट्स को आप एक्युमुलेट करिए। कुछ विश्वविद्यालयों ने इसका और एक आसान तरीका निकाल लिया है जो ऑलरेडी राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति में है, मल्टीपल एंट्री एंड मल्टीपल एग्जिट। बीए में पहले साल के बाद आप सर्टिफिकेट ले लीजिए। बीए के फर्स्ट ईयर का पाठ्यक्रम आप पास कर लीजिए, सर्टिफिकेट लीजिए। अभी तो मैं आपसे कह रहा था कि बीए के अगर आपने 20 में से 18 पास कर लिए तो भी कुछ नहीं मिलेगा। लेकिन अब क्या है कि अगर 1/3 पास कर लिया तो सर्टिफिकेट, 2/3 पास कर लिया तो डिप्लोमा, और पूरा पास कर लिया तब डिग्री। यानी कुछ भी ना हो, अगर आप 18 पास कर चुके हैं तो इसका मतलब है कम से कम आपको डिप्लोमा तो मिल ही जाएगा, डिग्री ना मिल पाए। यानी आपका प्रयास, एक्चुअली राष्ट्र भी इसमें आपकी शिक्षा में योगदान देता है। राष्ट्र का भी जो संसाधन है उनका बेहतर उपयोग हो रहा है और आपको भी, छात्रों को भी उनके प्रयासों का परिणाम दिखने लगेगा और ये उनके बैंक अकाउंट में जमा हो जाएंगे। एंट्री है फिर एग्जिट है। 1 साल बाद आपने बीए में पढ़े, छोड़ दिया, नौकरी लग गई, फिर 1 साल बाद लौट के आए, फिर आपने नौकरी ज्वाइन किया, फिर आपने चले गए। तो ये जो प्रक्रिया है मल्टीपल एंट्री मल्टीपल एग्जिट, कई विश्वविद्यालयों ने शुरू कर दिया है, इग्नू ने भी शुरू कर दिया है, दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी में भी चल रहा है। और नहीं शुरू हुआ तो आप शुरू कर दीजिए, इसमें क्या दिक्कत है। सर्टिफिकेट देना 1 साल के बाद, डिप्लोमा देना 2 साल के बाद, 3 साल के बाद डिग्री देना। ये इसी प्रकार से पीजी में भी हम लोग करते क्या थे कि अगर पीजी के दोनों साल नहीं पढ़ पाया तो बाहर हो गया, ऐसा नहीं। 1 साल पढ़ लिया, सर्टिफिकेट दे दीजिए, दूसरे साल के बाद पूरी डिग्री दे दीजिए। पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट डिप्लोमा हम लोग देते हैं और फिर डिग्री देते हैं। ये संपूर्ण राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति छात्रोन्मुखी है, छात्र के हितों को ध्यान में रख रही है। संसाधनों का बेहतर उपयोग हो सकता है इसमें। वोकेशनल और स्किल कंपोनेंट भी इसमें शामिल हो सकता है। ऑनलाइन प्रोग्राम्स अफोर्डेबल हो सकते हैं। राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति ने इस पर भी महत्व दिया है। पहले जमाने में ऑनलाइन शिक्षा नहीं थी। 2018 में भारत सरकार ने ऑनलाइन रेगुलेशंस बनाए और 2020 में पहली बार आपने ऑनलाइन पाठ्यक्रमों को शुरू किया और अब तक 400 से ज़्यादा ऑनलाइन पाठ्यक्रम चल रहे हैं। 100 से ज़्यादा संस्थाएं अब इससे जुड़ गई हैं। ऑनलाइन अफोर्डेबल है। बीए, बीकॉम, बीएससी, एमए, एमकॉम, एमबीए पॉपुलर है और लोग घर बैठे 4 क्वाड्रेंट अप्रोच के तहत इन डिग्रियों को प्राप्त करते हैं। यूजीसी ने इसमें कुछ शिथिलताएं भी दे रखी है। जिन्होंने NIRF में फर्स्ट 100 या 200 में पिछले 3 सालों में 2 साल अपना स्थान प्राप्त किया है, या NAC का 3.25 है, तो कोई अलग से परीक्षण नहीं करा रहे हैं, कोई अलग से आपकी जांच नहीं होगी। आपको परमिट कर रहे हैं कि 13 प्रोग्राम आप शुरू कर सकते हैं, 3 यूजी और 10 पीजी। ऑनलाइन शिक्षा को बढ़ावा देना, उद्देश्य यही है कि हमारी पहुंच उन स्थानों पर हो जहां शिक्षा की लौ नहीं पहुंची है। और यहीं पर राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति ने एक और बात कही है, विदेशों में हमारी पहुंच। हमें पहुंचना है और विदेश में हमारी शिक्षा का हमेशा बोलबाला रहा है। हमारी शिक्षा के महत्व को विदेशों में पहचाना गया है। ऑनलाइन होंगे तो अपने आप ही विदेश में पहुंच जाएंगे। कई विश्वविद्यालयों ने अंतर्राष्ट्रीय प्रकोष्ठ बना रखे हैं अंतर्राष्ट्रीय छात्रों के लिए, और लगातार विदेश से जुड़ने वाले छात्रों की संख्या ऑनलाइन, हमारे कैंपस भी बाहर जा रहे हैं, ऑफलाइन भी विदेशों में उच्च शिक्षा के अवसर उपलब्ध करा रहे हैं। क्योंकि हमारे भारतीय कई देशों में हैं और वो चाहते हैं कि भारत की शिक्षा उनको मिले। उस उद्देश्य को पूरा करने के लिए भी हम लोग लगातार इस प्रक्रिया में सहभागी हो सकते हैं। बहुत से देश चाहते हैं कि जिस प्रकार की छात्रोन्मुखी, होलिस्टिक, मल्टीडिसिप्लिनरी, वोकेशनल एजुकेशन हम लोग उपलब्ध करा रहे हैं, ये उन तक भी पहुंचे। और लगातार इस दिशा में भी हमारे परिणाम सुखद रहे हैं। इंटरनेशनलाइजेशन की जब हम बात करते हैं तो कहीं ना कहीं हम लोग अपने भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरा की भी बात थोड़ी होती है। हमारे जो विदेश में डायस्पोरा है वो भारत के बारे में जानना चाहते हैं, भारत की संस्कृति, भारत की विधाएं, उनको हम किस प्रकार से उन तक पहुंचाएं। और शिक्षा एक बहुत बड़ा माध्यम है और ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन तो बहुत बड़ा माध्यम है। इसीलिए कई संस्थानों ने ज्योतिष, कालगणना, वैदिक मैथमेटिक्स, वेद विज्ञान, भारतीय संस्कृति, भारतीय परिवेश, संगीत, कला इत्यादि क्षेत्रों में अपने ज्ञान को विदेशों तक पहुंचाने का प्रयास किया है। और इससे हमारी पहुंच बाहर काफी होने लगी है। राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति का एक बहुत बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण पहलू है मातृभाषा में शिक्षण। इसमें अलग से सोचने की कोई आवश्यकता नहीं है। हिंदी में, हाँ, हिंदी में पढ़ा सकते हैं, तमिल में पढ़ा सकते हैं, तेलुगु में पढ़ा सकते हैं। कोई विवाद नहीं है कि हिंदी में ही पढ़ना है, कोई विवाद नहीं है कि अंग्रेजी में पढ़ना है। हम लोग चाहते हैं कि मातृभाषा में शिक्षण हो। राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति का सबसे बड़ा और सबसे महत्वपूर्ण परिवर्तन मातृभाषा में शिक्षण है। तमिल में अगर किसी बच्चे को पढ़ना है, अगर उसको अंग्रेजी में पढ़ाएंगे, हम ये नहीं कहते कि अंग्रेजी में अच्छा नहीं पढ़ पाएगा, लेकिन उससे अवसर दिया जाए कि मातृभाषा में अगर तुम्हें शिक्षण मिले तो बेहतर होगा। कारण मातृभाषा, माँ की भाषा बचपन से कम 3 से 4 वर्ष पूर्व ही वो प्रयोग करना शुरू कर देता है। बाकी जो क्लासरूम की भाषाएं हैं वो जब 5 साल या 6 साल का हो जाए तभी वो क्लास में जाता है। इसलिए मातृभाषा में शिक्षण एक बहुत बड़ा प्रयोग है और विश्व के बहुत से देश अपनी मातृभाषा में ही शिक्षण कराते हैं, चाहे वो इनोवेशन की दृष्टि से हो, चाहे वह शोध की दृष्टि से हो। दोनों ही दृष्टि से अच्छे वैज्ञानिक बनना है, अच्छे शिक्षक बनना है, अच्छे प्रशासक बनना है, मातृभाषा में शिक्षण निश्चित रूप से लाभकारी होता है। भारत सरकार लगातार प्रयास कर रही है कि मातृभाषा में शिक्षण को बढ़ावा मिले। अभी हाल ही में आपने सुना होगा कि मध्य प्रदेश में MBBS, जिसके बारे में प्राय कहा जाता था अंग्रेजी में ही पुस्तकें उपलब्ध है, हिंदी में पुस्तक है ही नहीं, सारे किताब खाली हिंदी में नहीं मातृभाषा में उपलब्ध कराएंगे। मातृभाषा में पढ़िए। AICT ने इंजीनियरिंग के बुक्स को मातृभाषा में उपलब्ध कराया, पहले साल के अब दूसरे साल के उपलब्ध करा रहे हैं। मातृभाषा में पुस्तक हम लोग लिख सकते हैं, हम लोग पढ़ा सकते हैं। इंदिरा गांधी राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विश्वविद्यालय ने एक प्रयोग किया था 6 जनवरी से, जो BA सोशल साइंसेस के सब्जेक्ट्स हैं, हिस्ट्री है, सोशियोलॉजी है, पॉलिटिकल साइंस है, पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन है, इकोनॉमिक्स है, इनको तमिल, तेलुगु, मलयालम, गुजराती, मराठी, पंजाबी, असमीज में पढ़ाने का प्रयास शुरू कर दिया। पढ़ाना तो सबसे आसान है और वहीं के प्राध्यापक विषय को पढ़ा रहे हैं। आज हम लोगों ने 3000 वीडियोस बना लिए हैं। ये आप लोग भी कर सकते हैं। आप सभी शिक्षक हैं, अपनी मातृभाषा में अपने ज्ञान को अपने छात्रों तक पहुंचा सकते हैं। और एक और काम आप कर सकते हैं। प्रायः लोग कहते हैं कि हमें टेक्स्ट बुक्स उपलब्ध नहीं है। टेक्स्ट बुक्स लिख सकते हैं। हम सभी शिक्षक हैं, अपनी अपनी मातृभाषा में अपने अपने बच्चों को मातृभाषा में बेहतर शिक्षा प्रदान करने के लिए हम पाठ्य पुस्तकों को लिखना प्रारंभ करें। हमें मालूम है कि बहुत से प्रांतों में इस दिशा में बहुत काम हो चुके हैं। विशेष रूप से सारे मातृभाषाओं में जो लैंग्वेज सब्जेक्ट्स है उस पर तो पाठ्यपुस्तकें उनकी लैंग्वेज में हैं ही, साथ ही सोशल साइंसेस की अधिकांश क्षेत्रों में पाठ्यपुस्तकें मिल रही हैं। साइंस में थोड़ा कम है, बढ़ावा ले रहे हैं। कंप्यूटर साइंस में शुरू हो गया है, आपने देख लिया कि AICT ने कर दिया है। MBBS में जब शुरू हो गया मातृभाषा में, तो बाकी BA, BSc, BCom, MA, MSc, MCom में क्या दिक्कत है? जब हम सबको ये पता है कि मातृभाषा में शिक्षण से बौद्धिक विकास बेहतर होता है। हम चीज़ों को बहुत अच्छी तरह से समझ सकते हैं। हमारी तर्क शक्ति, हमारी शोध करने की जो क्षमता या नव प्रवर्तन, इनोवेशंस करने का जो प्रयास है, ये हमें बेहतर परिणाम देगा। हम क्यों ना करें? अगर हम 15 लाख शिक्षक हैं, हम अगर संकल्पित हो जाएं अपने अपने क्षेत्र में, अपने अपने प्रदेश में, तमिल, तेलुगु, मलयालम, गुजराती, मराठी, उर्दू, हिंदी, असमीज में पाठ्य पुस्तकें लिखेंगे तो हमारा शिक्षण मातृभाषा में होना शुरू हो जाएगा। बच्चों को किताबें मिल जाएंगी, हम पढ़ाना शुरू कर देंगे। राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति इनोवेशंस को बढ़ावा देती है, नव प्रवर्तन। ये क्या है? ये हमारे मस्तिष्क की शक्ति है। हमारी संपूर्ण शिक्षण व्यवस्था आज हमारी तर्क शक्ति को आगे बढ़ाती है, लेकिन कल्पना शक्ति को नहीं। और जब हम इनोवेशन की बात करते हैं तो तर्क शक्ति और कल्पना शक्ति दोनों का बेहतर समन्वय होना चाहिए, जो हमारे मस्तिष्क के दोनों हिस्सों में उपलब्ध है। बायां तर्क, दाहिना कल्पना, दोनों की आवश्यकता है। इमेजिनेशन की बहुत आवश्यकता है। इनोवेशंस, अगर आप देखेंगे अधिकांश देशों में इनोवेशंस साइंटिफिक रिसर्च को प्रमोट करते हैं, नई चीज़ों के, नई प्रक्रियाओं को बेहतर बनाते हैं। हम एंटरप्रेन्योर्स बना सकते हैं। हमें करना कुछ नहीं है, केवल तर्क शक्ति के साथ साथ कल्पना शक्ति को भी प्रोत्साहित करना चाहिए। कला, संगीत, साहित्य, ये ऐसे विषय हैं। इसीलिए राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति क्या कहती है? हमें मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी प्रोग्राम्स बनाने हैं, मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी, और ये हम लोग आसानी से कर सकते हैं। मस्तिष्क की पूरी शक्ति का प्रयोग करिए, इनोवेटिव हो जाइए। अगर आप देखें, हमने जो अब तक बातचीत किया है, ये बातचीत हम सब के लिए बहुत प्रासंगिक है। डिजिटल एजुकेशन, स्वयं प्रभा, मल्टीडिसिप्लिनरी एजुकेशन, एकेडमिक बैंक ऑफ क्रेडिट, क्रेडिट फ्रेमवर्क, इंटरनेशनलाइजेशन, मातृभाषा में शिक्षण, इनोवेशन, कुछ भी आप कहें, हर क्षेत्र में हम कुछ कर सकते हैं। टेक्स्ट बुक्स लिखना है अपने बच्चों के लिए, विदेशी भाषा में नहीं, अपनी भाषा में हम अपना योगदान दे सकते हैं। यही इस प्रकार की शिक्षा नीति का सार है। हम पूरे प्रोग्राम के पर विचार न करके हम पाठ्यक्रम आधारित शिक्षा दे रहे हैं, और ये प्रक्रिया हमारे यहाँ 2016 से चल रही है, कोई नया नहीं है, और इसको हम लोगों को आगे बढ़ाना है। हमने आपको एक राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति का ओवरव्यू दिया है। इसमें कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग की भी बात है। अपने आप हो जाए कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग, लेकिन हम अपने मस्तिष्क को खुला रखें। छात्र केंद्रित, शिक्षक के को बेहतर अवसर प्रदान करने वाली इस राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति को हम लोग अपने स्तर पर, अपने विश्वविद्यालय, अपने महाविद्यालय, जहां कहीं भी संभव हो, उसमें आगे बढ़ाने का प्रयास करें। आज ही हमने देखा, एक कार्यक्रम था सुबह, वैदिक गणित में 7 दिन की फैकल्टी डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम। संभव है, अब सब संभव हो रहा है, क्योंकि हमने अपनी सोच को बढ़ावा दिया है। भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरा हमारे पास है, पाश्चात्य का भी कोई चीज़ हो उसको भी हम शामिल करें, कोई दिक्कत नहीं, क्योंकि शिक्षा उन्मुक्त हो रही है, हमारे मस्तिष्क की शक्ति को बढ़ा रही है। आप सब इस राष्ट्र के अभियान में सहभागी बने। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, बहुत बहुत आभार।
Different aspects of new education policy 2020, especially in the context of higher education. There are few questions posed by our viewers. So one is, how can we increase the GER in higher education without affecting the quality of the higher education?
Already I have talked to you about the Swayam courses, Swayam Prabha courses, Swayam Prabha mode, and also the online programs. Blended learning is one of the areas for which now we are getting more and more comfortable. We can use 40%, to the tune of 40% open educational resources. Credit transfer mechanism is also possible, because if we have to increase the GER, we can't increase with brick and mortar model. We have to think beyond that, and for that the open and distance learning and the online learning, that is why digital learning, both are important. And you know that Honorable Prime Minister has already announced to establish a digital university. The purpose is quality learning, reaching to all corners of the country, access, quality, affordability, the pillars on which the national education policy, it was being drafted and implemented, they have been taken care of. And therefore we see that most of the steps which we take, even when we look at the credit transfer mechanism, it also tells us no need to waste any credits which the learner has earned. So we should not worry about it. Automatically the GER will go up. And you see the same number of educational institutions, existing institutions, they are going for online programs. They are contributing significantly through blended mode of learning.
So you have explained the academic bank of credit very lucidly. One of our curious viewer asked to know, is there any expiry of credits that we have earned?
Presently, the regulation stipulates 7 years, but it is evolving process. It may take its own time and see that to what extent the period can be extended, because we have to maintain the records also, and for maintaining the records we have to see that for how long we can keep the records, and these records, they are transferable also from one institution to another. So therefore national records for all these credits that we kept. So initially the regulations, it provide for 7 years.
So one more question related to credit transfer only. How can there be credit transfer between face-to-face education and online or ODL education and vice versa?
As far as regulations are concerned, they are not making any distinction between the two. Because if you look at the 2020 regulations, ODL and online, it clearly stipulates that those who have earned any degrees, any credits from the open and distance learning or online learning, they will be considered as equivalent to the credit earned in the conventional system. So both the modes are equal. So the parity issue is not at all. So both are equal, and the credits there, they can be interchangeable also. And even in case of IGNOU also, we are having around 150 courses which were put on the SWAYAM platform, and 124 institutions, they have opted for the credit transfer. And most of these institutions, they are from face-to-face and conventional mode. So we see that the transfer of credits is going on.
Okay. So you were focused on innovation, creativity, imagination. So how this NEP 2020 is going to impact on the research at a global stage?
Already for that, a central level institution is going to be created. And the purpose here is, in case of researches, they should be empirical. And that is why I am telling you that once our graduates, they will be having the multidisciplinary degrees, having focus on analytical skills, then they are in a much better position to do the researches. The rote learning, that is to be avoided, and that emphasis it we have found in our national education policy. So the purpose is the learners, they should learn the things in their mother tongue, then the ability to analyze those issues, that will be much better. And thereafter, if you open your mind and allow your mind for imagination and dreams, then innovations will go up, and thereby the research quality it will also go up. Empirical researches, they are quite relevant, and they are the need of the hour. And that is why in the degree level also we are adding the skill component, so that the quality of the teaching learning process and the ultimate output which we are getting from the degree, that will be more beneficial, and that will be more employable also in the industries and other places.
So one more query is, AICT has introduced ATL virtual lab facility for the science programs. So how NEP in 2020 is helping out in merging the vocational education in line with the NEP 2020 framework, and also the provision of virtual labs as AICT has?
A virtual lab, already this concept, it has come up in Western countries long back. And in science programs, the virtual labs, they are being used mostly. Because if we wait for creating brick and mortar approach, even for the science programs, we have to wait for another 50 to 100 years to enhance our GER. And that is why if you see that in case of computers, already the software based experimentations are going on. Similarly, the apprenticeship also, people are trying to see that can we create a virtual environment through which the training can be made possible. In case of library science, it's possible. In case of computers, it's possible. And I have seen the instances, especially in case of one of the open universities, they are using the virtual labs for their undergraduate programs in science. So door is open, because now we are saying that blended learning, mixture of both. So technology is to be used. Wherever technology is possible, we must go for it. And that is why if you look at Coursera courses or even the SWAYAM courses, you will find that the quality of their presentations, the contents, they are very rich also. And in most of the things, the practical things, they are also being illustrated through the virtual setup. And people are moving in that direction.
So one related question again. This query is, enlighten on how to introduce certified skill-based education in the BSc program, and which skill institute of Government of India can be contacted for the integration?
In the beginning itself, I have already told you that National Skill Development Program National Skill Development Institution is coming forward with so many skill quotients, and they are ready to suggest that 20%, 30%, whatsoever quotient you would like to add in your undergraduate program, that they are ready to support, because they are having so many skills with them, and they are also coming forward with their own structure, because there are sector skill councils also. Their support can also be taken. Agriculture is there, engineering is there. You see that in most of the areas, the sector skill councils, they also help us to identify the areas, and we can use those skills for our programs also. I have also talked about you, the National Council for Vocational Education and Training. They are also quantifying the skills, and all these things, they were not available earlier. The National Education Policy has opened up this particular area also to all of us, and now we may join, because the people are venturing, the institutions are venturing, that they may go for a course wherein at least 20% or 25% of the contents, they will be skill based. IGNOU is also venturing, and maybe it is going to come up with those courses from January 2023. So with 20-25% skill oriented courses in an undergraduate program, definitely the learners will become much more employable. Paper degrees, now they have lost their relevance unless you add apprenticeship or the skill component in that. And that is what the National Education Policy tells us. In the beginning itself, it says holistic, vocational. Why it is focusing on the vocational and the holistic education? Because you have to add that component. And there are institutions which are going for it. Delhi University is also going for that. And we all can go for it. Experimentation is continuously going on. Because National Education Policy, it gives us freedom to go ahead. Look at the available resources and try to use those resources for the benefit of the learners. Learner-centric. And mind, the knowledge, the imagination part, all these will be strengthened in this process. The people will become much more employable, and they may become entrepreneurs also.
So, with respect to multidisciplinary education, there is one query that if a student takes admission first year in BA, can he shift to BCom in second year and BSc in third year?
Right now, that sort of facility, it has not been created. But what he can do is, if he is a student of BA, then he can go for 4 papers or 5 papers of commerce from Swayam. Free registration, appear in the examination, and the credit transfer is possible. At least in his bank account, 5 commerce papers they will also be added, and 5 science papers they will also be added. So thereby he can say that BA courses already he has done it, commerce courses also he has done it, and also the science courses he has done it. So that facility is existing, and maybe in due course of time, the transfers from one discipline to another, because our ultimate aim is that all the disciplines, they will be interchangeable. The focus is on interdisciplinary, intradisciplinary. So that thrust is already there. But in case of brick and mortar structures, such sort of flexibility will lead to so many other administrative issues. So it may take its own time. That is why we are focusing on the blended learning. Use the face-to-face, plus for those parts where it is not possible in your organization, then you may use the digital material available, digital courses available, and the technology support you can use for making your programs multidisciplinary.
So, if a student has enrolled in engineering degree, can he take admission in Sanskrit course in any of the provided by any of the institutes?
Why not? Why not? Vice versa, sometimes it becomes very difficult, people say. But if you look at the recent thrust of the AICT also, they are also moving in that direction. That even the Sanskrit person can also go to join an BTech program. So initially that advertisement has come, but somehow the process of change, they wanted to make it slow. But ultimate objective is to have the free movement from any discipline to any other discipline. Gone are the days when we used to clear our degrees in engineering, we could not study any subjects in Sanskrit. But now each one is free. Even now I can also study a course in computers, course in physics, course in Hindi, course in Sanskrit, in any discipline. That is why SWAYAM is facilitating that. I started from SWAYAM because looking at their importance, which Government of India has thought in 2016, and the number of courses, they are continuously increasing in that also. And they are also being translated in the regional languages, mother tongues also.
Sir, with respect to mother tongue, there is one courses in mother languages. There is one question that if we learn courses in our local language, then how can we compete it in the global market?
If you look at other countries of the world,
Right.
they have also studied their programs in their mother tongue. But I am not saying that we should not learn the languages which are available in our country as well as outside the country. Language is also a skill, and the person should increase their skill sets also. Graduating in Tamil does not mean that he will not study Marathi. It is an additional skill. He will not study Russian. He will not study Japanese. Because skill is also, this is also a skill. Language is also a skill. If you look at a person who knows four languages, definitely the value will be more. But understanding the basic of any discipline, mother tongue is the most appropriate mode through which we can reach a learner. So that is why foreign languages and our own languages, mother tongues, they are also being promoted all over the country. We are not against any language. National education policy clearly gives that thrust. International division is there. International promotions is there. So how you can promote without knowing those languages? Look at any country. They are also coming with the language which we are knowing. Hindi, it is now being taught in around 100 countries of the world, because they also want to know our language. Even they would like to know our entire mother tongue, that entire list of 12 or 13 languages which are being specified as mother tongue.
Sir, with your leadership, IGNOU is again the forerunner in implementing the NEP-2020 in its offerings. In terms of multidisciplinarity, online education, Matrabhasha, multiple entry, exit, employability, skill development, anything that is there in NEP we were doing, and we are also adding into our basket. So for our higher education teachers, please provide some guidelines how they can use these best practices in implementing their own institutes. By that we will sum up today's sessions.
No suggestion, because we all are teachers. We have understood it, what is national education policy. We have also seen, if you look at the videos, you will find that there are success stories. There are efforts which are made by the Government of India since 2016. Credit transfer, credit recognition, digital learning, online learning, ODL learning, so many things are there. We are only moving ahead. Now we are having a credit framework, recognition of prior learning, skill components they can be added. So everything is going on, and you are the best judge to decide the future course of action. I am also a teacher, you are also a teacher. So you see that what is best for the learner, we must go for it, and national education policy gives that sort of flexibility to everyone. That is why we would like to reach to every teacher rather than reaching to the heads of the institutions or academic administrators only.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, viewers. Namaste.
Now, before I start with the actual presentation of the policy itself, I will spend a few minutes with respect to the relevance of education in the present context. A lot of things have been asked to me in public with respect to why at this time an educational policy, what kind of relevance does it have in the context of India and the context of the global developments. And always you have to articulate some aspects of it. Of course, first we all recognize there's more than 3 decades since we had the last one, and there are several developments that have happened. India, of course, will have the highest population of young people in the world over the next decade, and we recognize that nearly 50% of the population will be below 35 years of age, aspiring for high quality education. This democratic dividend certainly has to be taken advantage of. I don't think we have discussed it in several platforms. We have debated it, and certainly this is a direction and aspiration for the country which we have to realize. Globalization and demands of a knowledge economy and knowledge society call for emphasis on the need for acquisition of new skills by learners on a regular basis for them to learn how to learn and become lifelong learners, a critical consideration to be addressed appropriately. And that is where this education policy certainly has focused on. Changes in knowledge landscape, especially science and technology, I'm going to have to say here, with advances in big data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, all demand skilled workforce involving mathematics, computer sciences, data science, as well as multidisciplinary abilities across the sciences, social sciences, and humanities. The education of future need to be reconfigured in order to meet the goals of the global education development agenda. We are a part of that. The goal 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals 4 of 2030 that seeks to ensure inclusion and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning for opportunities for all. So this is broadly just to give it kind of a flavor of the kind of consideration probably the people who matter in terms of defining when to come out with a policy thought about. Now, how did we go about? A little bit of that also is of interest for the audience here. The process, of course, was that we had the members of the policy committee with the government set it up. And then we had a members of a drafting committee. We thought that besides the policy framing, we also need to bring it up in a way in which it can be presented. We had a special drafting committee. It had members of the policy committee also. And then we had a set of members, experts, who provided a kind of a technical secretariat support for doing this. And not to be satisfied with it, this is where I have my own strong views. The question of being independently evaluated with respect to the type of presentation we are making, ideas that we have created, and the strategy we have crafted. We put certain peer reviewers, people who are away from the policy formulation, who are very well aware of the kind of educational system, the academic system this country over the years, and therefore competent enough to give us very vital inputs about the first level of drafting this policy. So there were peer reviewers here. Discussions and consultation, we went through a very, even though this particular policy was initially having a basis of previous policy document, in fact, 4 years of work, very intense work had gone through in the formulation of this policy earlier itself. Documentation from downward, consultations were there, submissions from individuals and groups were there. So there was the previous Honorable Minister of Education. We had also the TSR Subramaniam Committee and many others. So we had many things to fall back on. The question was to review them, to adopt them, and to see where we need to move extra efforts. And that is where we saw that discussions and consultations with the different stakeholders, including organizations, institutions, and individuals. We had quite a number of inputs which were new, which had very unique in terms of things which were not earlier presented or considered for discussion. And of course, when everything was ready and when we made an initial presentation to the ministry, they felt that ultimately to go into the public domain is a national, very important national document. We need to get the public responses of what they are in for the future of education. We got more than 2.5 lakh responses from both from the school and the college education, higher education point of view. So that was another major thing. We went through a consultation with the state educational authorities, including in many of the states, we had also consultation with the state ministers. And then we had a review, so that when the policy was in the near final stages, the number of reviews were conducted by the Honorable Prime Minister himself. In fact, he went through every aspect of the policy and every items of the policy, and he wanted to make sure that there is a level of pragmatism and the ability to carry this forward in the implementation domain. So this is one of the important things that the Honorable Prime Minister, he came out with several interesting suggestions also, I should mention. So that is the other part of it. And finally, we got the cabinet approval on the 29th of July 2020. Immediately following that, for a number of measures, the first and foremost was to make sure that there is a very intense familiarization process for this. So major conferences with chancellors, vice chancellors, directors of higher education institutions, other high-level functionaries were convened. These are meetings convened by UGC and Ministry of Education and addressed by Honorable Prime Minister and His Excellency the President of India. So these were kind of things that were also carried. This also underscored the importance at the highest level that they attach to the policy. And now we are in the stages, and I will say at the end of my talk a little bit about how the concerned agencies and the ministry is moving towards the implementation. Now, to just give a framework for the policy provides an integrated and flexible approach to education. It has kept the interconnectedness, the various phases of education in mind, and how the same will enable continuity, coherence, and processes to ultimately realize an end-to-end educational roadmap for the country. An articulation of a broad view of education encompassing the holistic development with special emphasis on kindling of the creative potential of each individual in its richness and complexity has grown increasingly popular in the recent years, several domains of discussions. The policy thus aims to have it aims at the development of the 21st century skills. I don't have to re-emphasize what these 21st century skills are here for the students while giving them the flexibility in making choices consistent with the dynamics of a knowledge society. Before we go straight into the higher education and go into the details of the same, a little bit about the connection between the school education and the higher education. We do recognize, all of us, and the policy does so, the interconnectedness of the various phases of education. I mentioned it earlier. School education is of intrinsic importance, there's no question. How a student experiences the schooling phase of education could have a significant influence on those subsequently pursue higher education, including professional and vocational, besides, of course, helping to lay the foundation for lifelong learning. So keeping this in mind, I'm trying to first put the overall policy element, the element that is gone into the policy as a part of the academic side, not just on the governance and other areas. We have the early childhood care and education, home education, Anganwadis and preschools. One of the very key elements, because we did make transformatory recommendations in the context of the early school education. I will say a few words about it in the subsequent projections. And right now it is divided over a 15-year period of foundational, preparatory, middle, and secondary. We'll see the details of that. On the higher side, of course, we have the undergraduate, general education, teacher education, professional and vocational to focus a little bit. And then we have the postgraduate, masters, and PhD, need not be emphasized here. And ultimately, a national research foundation, a unique institution that will spur the research, and particularly in the educational institution and university system particular. And then, of course, we have areas like lifelong learning, adult education, and many other areas that have been also including the use of technology for education. These are all part and part of. So this is just the broad elements of the policy which you have touched upon in the policy. And I will, of course, as requested, I will try to concentrate on the higher education, but not before saying a few words about the kind of things that we have thought about in bringing the school education to a new domain. The extent 10+2 structure is what the early school education will be. It will be modified with a new pedagogical and curricular restructuring of 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, covering the ages 3 to 18. We have shown it here in terms of 4 levels. The foundational level, where the policy, this is the education starts, unlike at 6 years, now it starts at 3 years. 3 to 8 years is what we characterize the first 5 years as the foundational phase of the school education, 3 years of pre-primary, preschool, and then we have a primary education, which is first and second class, the grades. So you have the 5 years here. What is important in this phase, which will take you up to the age of 8, is the fact that the policy recognizes the individual differences in the cognitive development of children at this stage, and therefore formal structured learning will be absent during these 5 years. So The important thing is that each child has to be evaluated with respect to its growth of the brain, and these are not uniform, so there is no linear pattern in which the growth occurs. And it's also important that 85% of the brain virtually is matured by the age of 8. So we need to make sure that the learning process is suitably adopted, that maximal advantage of this kind of a pattern by 85% by the age of 8 is whether it is language learning, whether it is literacy and numeracy. These are all critical elements in this phase of the foundational phase of the school education. This you carry forward a little more from unstructured, you go into the curricular structure in the next 3 years, that is from age 8 to age 11, where the curricular structure and standardization can be slowly introduced. And carrying this forward for the next 3 years, you virtually go into subject areas. You have a teacher children student interaction much more effectively, and also have the capacity for abstraction, because that is something which was the earlier two phases much less because of the nature of the brain growth. And lastly, we have the secondary education, the last 4 years of school education, ages 14 to 18. There will be multidisciplinary orientation with exit options. This is the phase that will prepare the student for undergraduate program, and that's why I'm coming to this, because undergraduate program is very much related to the kind of orientation in the policy that we have tried to create in the secondary level of the school education, including early introduction of liberal arts education. So this is the kind of a thing. Of course, you have vocational education here, you have the exit option here. If you want to leave at the age of 18, the school education and take up some kind of a job, there are enough provisions for that, enough training and other kinds of things. In fact, we have recommended that we need to have a youngster who knows at least one vocational area thoroughly, 100% in by the time he leaves the school, that kind of a thing. And the first 4 elements of the vocational education in the overall scheme is a part of the secondary and part of the middle as well as the secondary education. So this is the broad thing. I thought I wanted to emphasize this mainly because these are the times in the we understand today the neural sciences and the kind of cognitive science which dictated this study of creating a policy around the present understanding of the brain and its growth. And I thought I should bring it to the attention of this erudite audience. And this is just to give you an idea of a brain, how critical it is to make sure that we make use of the brain and its stimulation, the early phase of the child's growth. And one can see very clearly the cognitive stimulation, what it does to the brain, to a case where such a simulation has not occurred. We can very clearly see the temporal lobes, how different they are in terms of its growth and maturity, and which essentially means how much you take advantage of the pattern of the brain growth in terms of the learning process and also the teaching process. Now, having said all this with respect to the school education, we move over to the undergraduate education, part of the higher education. What the policy does is to promote a holistic. We have made a broad approach which is holistic and multidisciplinary at the undergraduate level. And this is something which is not new to this audience, and especially I know IIT Delhi's some of the very early efforts in the context of holistic and multidisciplinary education. They generate more imagination and creativity in the student to ensure their all-rounded development. And of course, the concept which we today turn as a liberal education, which is really multidisciplinary and holistic, is an age-old idea in the Indian context. I don't have to say this again, the Banabhatta's Kadambari, which is considered a person was recognized as truly educated when he mastered the 64 kalas encompassing music, dance, painting, culture, languages, and in addition to subjects such as science, engineering, and mathematics, as well as vocational subjects. Liberal education explores the remarkable relationships that exist among the sciences and humanities, mathematics and arts, medicine and physics, etc., and more generally, the surprising unity of all fields of human endeavor. A comprehensive liberal education develops all capacities of human beings: intellectual, aesthetics, social, physical, emotional, and moral in an integrated manner. So this is the approach, and this is the one we have tried to translate into the policy as a crucial step to lead India into the 21st century. The fourth industrial revolution, multidisciplinary education is central. Even engineering schools, I know IITs following this, in this case, will move towards more holistic multidisciplinary education with more arts and humanities. While arts and humanities students will have to learn more science, while all will try to make an effort to incorporate more vocational subjects and soft skills. India's rich legacy, I mentioned about Bhanabhatta's work and many other kind of work subsequently in the arts as well as in sciences and beyond will significantly help in making the move towards such an education, hopefully an easy and natural transition. Now, how is it that the policy has put that in concrete terms? Liberal education with broad multidisciplinary exploration, it has to be an imaginative and flexible curricular structure, creative combinations of disciplines of study. This has been chosen, whether it's arts, crafts, sciences, mathematics. One has to see how do you create a creative combination. This has to be all worked out. And multiple exit and entry option is another important feature of the undergraduate education. And master's and doctoral education will provide a sub-based specialization as a part of the higher education. The 3 to 4 year undergraduate course with multiple exit options, the 4-year program is the main recommendation in terms of the undergraduate program. Undergraduate degree will encompass, of course, liberal arts, multidisciplinary and holistic education. And then you have the chosen major and minor concept that is there. We have the vocational subjects, and later on, even professional education will be brought into this kind of an undergraduate education, which is a 4-year. The 3-year program, which is currently very much there, will be retained with the necessary changes to bring in more holisticity and interdisciplinarity. Both the 3 and 4-year programs lead to a degree with honors with research work. So that is another thing that one. So there is a provision for research work in the undergraduate program, which prepare on one side it really enriches the youngster, on the other side we certainly have a better preparation for the higher education, and ultimately exit provision does exist with a 2-year diploma in the with a 2-year diploma at the end of 2 years of undergraduate and a 1-year certificate at the end of the first year of the undergraduate education. These are all drawn in a way in which there is enough provision for the person when he exits, he will have an appropriate kind of a professional career which can be chosen. And this is a preparation that you try to do in the first year and second year of the undergraduate education, with the proviso that in case in the later years you want to come back to the education with certain provisions with respect to the preparatory part of the entry, you can still continue your education to a 3rd year or a 4th year or even higher education part of the postgraduate education. This is also kept as a flexibility in the system. On the master's side, 2 years for those with a 3-year undergraduate degree, 1 year for those with a 4-year undergraduate degree with honors, and an integrated 5-year program is the 3 kind of flexible way in which you can go towards master education. Next one I would like to bring is integrating professional education. Regarding the integration of professional education with general education, the policy aims to take a holistic view to the preparation of professionals by ensuring broad-based competencies, an understanding of the social human context, a strong ethical compass and addition to the highest quality professional capacities. There is something holistic about the recommendation that we have made. I'm sure most of the professionals are very aware of this particular part of it, especially the IIT faculty and the academics. And but we have made a strong pitch for this because we think many of the higher education institutions, especially the university system, certainly need to address this much more seriously than what has been done so far. All institutions offering either professional or general education must be organically evolved into a multidisciplinary institution offering both by 2030. The overall higher education sector will aim to be an integrated higher education system, including professional and vocational education. Thus, this approach will be applicable to all higher education institutions across the current streams, which will eventually merge into one coherent ecosystem of higher education. This is ultimately the objective by 2030, 2035. There is certainly a time frame. It's not easy to make this kind of transformation, but we think that we need an integrated professional education as a part of an overall higher education. Now we come to the quality higher academic research in the fields. Again, I don't have to carry coal to Newcastle by giving you why we should do research, but put some numbers here just to see that the situation in our country with respect to research. Whereas IITs and those ISERs and things like that, you have tremendous research and vibrant activity going along with teaching. The broader question of the university systems, both state and the central, I think we need to do quite a lot. Even though we do address this question of equality academic research in the overall context of higher education institution, we would like to particularly make this policy focused on educational systems in the university, and many of the state universities and other private and some of the other private universities certainly has to review this in the context of the type of recommendation we made. And we do know the importance of the European Union estimate that two-thirds of the economic growth of Europe during they came the research. You had also, if you really look at the European accomplishments in the research and innovation, I was just trying to look at some of the details. 15% of all productivity gains in 2013, and that an annual increase of 0.2% of GDP in R&D investment result in an annual increase of 1.1% in GDP, a five-fold return for the type of outcome that they were getting. If you look at the present research and innovation investment in our case, 0.7, 0.8, we can keep debating on that. One has to compare it with respect to something like 2.8 in US or for 4.3 in Israel or South Korea. These are the kind of just 3 times the proportion of GDP. And this lower level of investment certainly meant the number of researchers in India per lakh of population is just 15. Numbers are 400, 800 kind of numbers. If you talk of US as an example, other it has an impact. I don't have to again emphasize low levels of patent application and scientific publication. So these are the kind of things, and certainly it was a very important agenda in the annual discussion with regard to propagating research in the higher educational institutions. And so we have spent a considerable space and time to make sure that we have some very tangible recommendations on promoting this. Now, how have we tried to recommend it? We have tried to recommend the creation of a national research foundation. It is it is based on the fact that the policy will put emphasis on catalyzing and energizing research and innovation across the country in all academic disciplines, with particular focus on the state universities and colleges. I said that in the beginning, and that is where really the lacuna does exist, and they're serious that too. A fund to seed research in all universities and colleges so that synergies between the research and quality education can be leveraged maximally. NRF will fund across all disciplines, it's not only in engineering, and also it will expand the research and innovation at all universities and colleges, including private institutions. We have not made a distinction between private institutions and public funded institutions. And the criterion will be, of course, the merit of the proposal and the kind of capability to do research and the type of outcomes. And we need to make sure that they get the benefit of a funding system where this can be pushed further. After all, they also educate Indians, and many of the people depend on the private institutions for education. The NRF will have the provision to cover many themes: science, technology, social sciences, arts, humanities, and many more. In the scope, of course, everybody understands funding research through a competitive peer review process, building research capacity at academic institutions across the country through mentorship. There are very specific recommendations we have made regarding the mentorship, the type of bringing in people who are veterans of research, who are at this time available for guiding research in these kind of institutions, who can spend some time doing research, guiding research, and also establishing the capability to conduct research in these kind of institutions, and then create the beneficial engagements between researchers, academy, everybody talks about this, and disseminating research through seminars, which is the other aspect of doing research. So these are the kind of things. This is just to give a little brief summary, a snapshot of the kind of thought that we have put into the National Research Foundation. We think this needs to be established, and this is also going to be. We had, of course, in our mind things like the National Research Foundation of USA. There are models of establishing this kind of a system, which really becomes a place where they address the excellence, the relevance, and the kind of outcomes with respect to research. And this has had a very strong influence on the support of research in the educational systems in many of the advanced countries, and particularly if you look at the models like US and Europe. And the other aspect that we have addressed is question of energized and educational capable faculty. We have spent devoted considerable space with regard to the questions of the faculty, the quality and engagement of its faculty. And virtually we can say the faculty is put back at the heart of the higher education. The rampant practice of contractual appointment, one issue, very heavy teaching loads, these are all may not be applicable to institutions like IITs. But these are anyway, I don't have to emphasize these aspects of it with respect to the broader issue of higher education. The infrastructure support, most faculty do not even have a structural faculty recruitment and development plan. So we have gone into the details, areas like recruitment, development plan, career proposal, progression, compensation management. Every part of the institutional development plan should carry this in the higher education, appropriately designed a permanent employment tenure track system for the bring in by 2030, autonomous faculty empowered to make curricular choices, conduct assessment of students, infrastructure for continuous professional development. These are other aspects of it, and appropriately designed bridge courses for mid-career professionals to get into teaching. That's also available so that if anybody wants to get into the teaching profession from another area where you need to facilitate this by the appropriate bridge courses that can be worked out. One of the important things that we have tried to do is to consider the school education and the teachers for the school education. One thing we found that the existing system, the school education, doesn't meet the type of standards and the type of things that we need to have as a background for teaching at the school level by the conventional educational system providing teacher education. What we have tried to do is to move the school education preparation will be done in the multidisciplinary university. Departments of education will be set up in many universities to offer a 4-year integrated state-specific BEd. The whole idea is to bring in BEd as one more of those undergraduate educational stream, one of the undergraduate educational stream, put it at a par with the other professional educational themes as well as the mainstream education. So BEd will be an undergraduate program of study covering both disciplinary and pedagogic teacher preparation courses for each stage of education, foundational to secondary. All subjects, including arts, sports, vocational education, they will be mainstream. On par with other undergraduate degrees, gradually the 4-year program will be eligible for master's and PhD programs. And the current 2-year BEd program will continue till 2030, but that after 2030, only those institutions who are capable or who are qualified to provide a 4-year teacher education can offer the 2-year teacher education. So we want to make sure that the standard, the quality, and the excellence that is intrinsic to defining the teacher education and preparation certainly it takes into account through the higher education systems overseeing the teacher preparation and education. 2-year program will be used for lateral entry of school teachers. There are also many interests in the people becoming school teachers in the lateral mode. Specifically designed courses in the pedagogy for mid-career professionals to become faculty will also be introduced. And I don't have to say substandard and dysfunctional teacher educational, thousands of them have been already shut down. And this is recommended to be reviewed. Either they move towards institutions like the degree giving autonomous colleges, or they close down, or move to other areas where the teacher education is not the main focus for these institutions. Something on the educational technology, Professor Ram Gopal mentioned about this with respect to the Prime Minister's this thing. We have addressed the questions of integrating technology at all levels of education. There is a very specific section where we have discussed this. I don't think I need to go much into the details of this. Again, the questions of 4 broad categories, well known: improving teaching, learning, and education, and supporting teacher preparation, continuous teacher professional development, enhancing educational access to disadvantaged groups, streamlining educational planning, administration, and management, and teacher training for trade. The edutech is critical. And towards this, I also bring in some example where improving teaching, learning, and evaluation as a part of the educational system's resilience during the recent crisis like the COVID-19, the online education, synchronous mode, live interactions, and asynchronous mode, blending high-quality pre-recorded content, rapid feedback with automated smart evaluation. So these are the kind of things on the improving the teaching and learning and education. Example regarding the supporting the teacher education and continuous teacher professional development, you have the recommender systems for content and certifications. Just another example in the COVID-19 scenario, the enhancing educational access to a disadvantaged group, connect the few specialized teachers to virtual classrooms of learners with specific needs, must address the digital divide. That is the biggest problem with respect to the implementation of some of the digital divide, and certainly this is to be seen. Now, streamlining education planning, administration, and management. We are also trying to set up as a part of this a national repository. There is a national repository of educational data to track progress in achieving educational goals. So this is just to give you a gist of the kind of thing that we have gone into details in the policy on the questions of educational introduction. But equally important is the fact we have tried to create a kind of a setup. It is not creating a lab, or it's not creating a facility, but it's a kind of a forum, a national educational technology forum, which we have recommended to be set up with the following rules to provide. The reason why we thought about this kind of a body in the context of choices, in the context of selection, in the context of a research in educational technology, in the context of adaptation of educational technology from other sources of technology. The reason why I thought is the moment you throw open an technology as a facilitator for certain type of function, whether it is related to education or many other areas, it could be even to deal with energy from the waste. The type of technology and the type of options that will be available are enormous. And most of the time, the ability to make choices is one of the biggest problems that we see. The questions of when ISRO did work related to a national, what you may call as a developmental program, where you wanted to bring educational information to remote areas. The choice was to make sure that we create educational material. But what were the materials? Those materials had to be researched whether it is appropriate for the tribal population which is going to receive the material. 2 to 3 years of research work was needed before you could decide what the educational material and the technique of reaching the local population who will receive those material, and they will get enriched themselves in the process. This is a major challenge. This is one of the kind of example that if you want to proliferate the technology, you need to have a means of studying it, understand, evaluate, and regulate it. That is the idea that National Educational Technology Forum that we have to set up to provide an independent evidence-based advice to state and governments on adoption of technology-based interventions, to build intellectual and institutional capacities in educational technology, to envision strategic thrust in areas of technology domain, and to promote education in them among educational institutions, and to articulate new directions of research and innovation, the use of technology for improving education. We would assume that these kind of things, also the actual activities on research and things, will be carried out by the Department of Education, which will come up in the higher educational institution, at least some of the higher educational institution. So the National Educational Technology Forum will maintain a regular info of authentic data from multiple sources, including the educational technology innovators and practitioners, particularly at the grassroots level. Disruptive technology, this is something you're very much day to day, you're seized with. The 1986-1992 policy could not expect the internet's disruption. This policy fully expects the educational system to face many technological disruptions, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on. two major aspects related to such disruptive technology we have identified: harnessing technology to improve educational outcome, that is human plus artificial intelligence, hybrid interactive systems, education in new and disruptive technologies, identifying them and preparing students in new large numbers. And finally, the project addresses both these kind of a thing, the policy. Now, on the governance side, I've just tried to, again, we got the policy in the beginning of my talk. I'm just coming back to the policy side and what is the kind of a governance structure that has been done. I am trying to here show the state education and the central education in two color codings. The blue is the color code for higher education and the yellow is the color code for this. And the main thing is the central agency for the education, the CABE, which is currently there, a council of the educational the thing. This particular CABE, the Central Advisory Board of Education, is now in this policy, they have elevated to the level that they will oversee the overall administration, governance, and evaluation of how the policy is going to work at from the central level, and also to make fine-tuning or midterm corrections if needed, and virtually becomes a kind of a kind of a reviewer and evaluator, and also a recommender with respect to the changes needed in the context of the higher education. So this is the system which is adopting the Central Advisory Board and making it more empowered. Then we have an Higher Educational Commission of India, which is what is recommended to be set it up as the highest body on the higher educational commissions. As a part of the governance, you have the four major verticals that are there under the HECI. One is academic and standard setting, which can be the PS, the professional standard setting bodies, and so on. That GEC, General Education Council, the National Council of Technical Education, the All India Council of Technical, the medical. Ultimately, they will all come under the PS, the professional standard setting bodies, under the academic and standard setting. And on the academic side, you have, of course, the National Higher Energy Qualification Framework for higher education. And then you have the second one, which is regulation, the National Higher Educational Regulatory Body. And then you have accreditation, National Accreditation, this is the council. Then you have the funding, Higher Educational Grants Council. So these are the four verticals under a Higher Educational Commission of India. This is what is recommended. And of course, the education provision will continue to be given by the autonomous institutions and other types of institutions which are a part of higher education or school education. So this is the kind of a structure, broad structure, that we have tried to evolve with respect to the governance of the educational system, and with this clear delineation of the higher education part of it. Important about this is the fact that empowered governance and autonomy of higher education. This is something which I don't think that this need to be much discussed in a place like IIT or IAC, but it's good to know that this is one of the things that had can't be enough concern while they were debating on the subject with several of the experts in this area. That recognizes the effective governance and leadership is the key to creation of a culture of excellence in the innovation of higher educational institutions. All the higher educational institutions in the next 15 years will become autonomous, self-governing entities through a system of graded accreditation or graded autonomy. With appropriate data accreditation, such institutions shall establish a board of governors consisting of highly qualified and competent individuals with proven capabilities and a strong sense of commitment, something which we need to do for many of the higher education institutions in this country. The board of governors will be empowered to govern the institution free of any external interference, something everybody talks about it. This is something very explicitly made clear in the policy. Make all appointments, including that of the head of the institution, and take all decisions regarding the governors. The board of governors will be responsible and accountable to the stakeholders through transparent self-disclosures of the relevant thing. The board of governors to develop a strategic institutional development. These are all there in many of the institutions, long term, medium term, 5 years, or short term, 1 to 3 years, based on the institution can develop educational and research outcome, parameters for quality and capacity, improve organizational and financial and human resource development plan to assess the progress. So this is just to give you a flavor of what we have recommended in the empowered governance and autonomy of the higher education. So the most important aspect is the fact that we have strongly recommended the autonomy on the governance, on the academics, as also on the finances. Now, what is the kind of way forward before I conclude the thing? There are several things I did mention in the beginning of my talk that there has been one of the most important steps that was taken immediately after the government took decision on accepting this recommendation with necessary inputs from public domain and other sources is the fact that once they knew that there were a number of presentations, there were a number of discussions, there were a number of seminars and other kinds of interactive systems and both Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable President were involved in many of these. I don't have to say that here. Many of you were there as a part of that particular thing. So there is quite a lot that has happened in terms of sensitizing the policy in its role, but certainly there are many things which continue to be inquired about, seek clarification about, and not every some of them will come forward only when you try to do these things. You start getting a feel of the issues, and that is where I said about the midterm correction or fine tuning or better clarification or change of strategy. This will be a part and parcel of this, but by and large, I find that this is understood by many of the policymakers and implementation the related responsible people. The MOE itself has done an action plan. Now they have done it. I understand. They have, because I'm telling this this part of it more from the inputs that I received rather than trying to be a part of it. But I want to say that the MOE has certainly provided a good action plan, which they have worked it out, which has got something like 100 and they have taken the higher education policy section. They have looked at the various policies items. They have converted them into identified action plans, and 181 activities have been identified with the time of frame that it needs to do this under 16 broad themes. This is what they have tried to do. We need to do this. There's a continuous churning of these ideas, and some discussions are going on this. The UGC on its own has been also organizing conclaves for discussions on this particular thing. And then there have been a lot of the outreach of the policy to different segments of the governance systems of the country, both the central and the state, has been another major feature of the recent efforts in trying to make sure that the policy is read, understood, and then come out with suitable strategies of implementation which are applicable, because there are the local issues also. One has to keep it in mind. There is a broad strategy that we need to have for the country, for the policy to be translated into the next step of implementation, and also specifics with respect to the local conditions or the regional conditions and things of that kind, which is more than just the policy. It has got finances, it has got the resources, human resource, and many other things. So this is something on which work will be done. But the fact I would like to emphasize is, and you know this again because you are a part of a system which is implementing it, that this work is in the forward, in the movement. And I cannot but conclude with the statement that, as I said in the beginning, I think this is a very unique policy. It has its own challenges to implement. But I think what is important and what is reassuring for some of us is the fact that many elements of this has been done in some form or other by institutions. And I mentioned about the IIT Delhi because of its pioneering role in areas like multidisciplinarity and approach of science, technology, and policy, society, or more recently, with respect to humanity and social sciences to be integrated into the undergraduate education. So these are things on which it is not that these are all totally new because of the policy, but there is much more that has been done through the various actions and directions and visions of various leaders and institutions of this country. I'm sure that we need to understand it very clearly. We need to see how that can be adopted and how this policy itself can aid in taking it forward. So with these few words, I would like to thank again the Institute, the director, deputy director, and others for this privilege of talking to you and sharing my thoughts with you. Thank you very much.
My name is K. Ramachandran. Currently, I work as Senior Advisor, Unit for International Cooperation, National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, New Delhi. The topic I have today is importance of policy in education and the fundamental principles guiding the National Education Policy 2020. Let me take the first part. What is the importance of a policy in the field of education? A policy normally gives a direction for education development in the country, say, for the next 10 years, next 20 years, and so on. Policy sets a vision. For instance, the National Policy on Education 2020 envisions an education system rooted in Indian ethos that contributes directly to transforming India into an equitable, vibrant knowledge society by providing quality education to all, thereby making India a knowledge superpower. That is the overall vision. So a policy provides a vision based on which we can formulate programmatic interventions to fulfill the vision, at the same time also to meet the education sector development programs in the country. The National Education Policy 2020 has certain fundamental principles guiding it. Number one, for instance, the policy seeks to recognize, identify, and foster the unique capabilities of each student so that we can nurture and foster her or his holistic development. The term holistic development is very important. I'll come back to that later. The second term, which is very important for all of us, is the term flexibility. The NEP-2020 envisages flexibility in paths of learning, in choice of programs and courses, so that the education can be tuned to the interest and talent of each student. So this is the second principle guiding the policy. The third principle is what we call honoring student diversity. India is a country of tremendous diversity in terms of socio-economic status, in terms of culture, in terms of language and so on. And therefore, the kind of students we get also would be of tremendous diversity. Many of them could be at the undergraduate, postgraduate level, first generation learners. How do we honor this diversity? Let me get back to the term holistic development. What do we mean by this term, holistic education? It simply means an education program that would help develop all capacities of human beings. For example, intellectual development or intellectual capacities, physical capacities, social development, emotional development, aesthetic development, ethical practices, and moral development, all in an integrative form. To have this integrated approach, therefore, will require exposure of students to or building capacities across variety of disciplines like arts, humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, vocational education, performing and visual arts, and so on. That would be what you call a multidisciplinary education approach. So to promote holistic development in the higher education sector, two quick actions. Number one, moving higher education institutions into large multidisciplinary institutions. And the word large is also important. In India, we have a large number of standalone institutions with the enrollment in many cases less than 1,000 and even less than 500. How do we move these single stream higher education institutions to a multidisciplinary institution? That becomes a transformative initiative, number one, for us. Second, can we offer in our universities and colleges multidisciplinary programs? That means a person may major in physics, maybe the person may offer a minor or opt for a minor in music or a visual art or history or economics. That means there is no clear-cut demarcation between arts, sciences, vocational field, and so on. That means the boundary between different areas of knowledge can be removed and get an integrated holistic education. Students are given options to choose courses or programs of study according to their interests and talents. And that is possible only we offer what we call multidisciplinary education. Gradually, all undergraduate programs in the country will move towards a multidisciplinary education approach, including those related to professional education, vocational education, and so on. So therefore, many of these professional, technical, and vocational education programs also will have this approach, what we call a multidisciplinary approach to education. So this is a transformative initiative we envisage through the implementation of the National Education Policy 2020. Third, the National Education Policy 2020 envisages what we call institutional restructuring and consolidation. What do we mean by this? All higher education institutions in the country would be categorized into 3 groups. Number 1, those which are referred to research intensive university. They will offer high quality research programs in addition to high quality teaching. That means the focus will be on both high quality research and teaching. This will be one set of higher education institutions. Second, teaching intensive universities. They will focus more on high quality teaching, but at the same time, they will also do significant research. This is a second category. The third category belongs to what is referred to as autonomous colleges or constituent colleges, which can award undergraduate degrees. But they will also, if they accept 4-year undergraduate program, will also have research projects done by the students. These are the 3 categories of institutions we propose to have during the next 10 years. Research intensive universities, teaching intensive universities, autonomous colleges, or constituent colleges, which will award undergraduate degrees. Gradually through this, the affiliating system followed by the current universities will go away. It means many of them would become the colleges affiliated now, would become what is referred to as autonomous colleges or constituent colleges, which would be an integral part of the university. So this is what we call institutional restructuring and consolidation. The fourth aspect, if you really want to improve the quality of education, make it multidisciplinary approach to education, we will need to attempt revamping of curriculum, including pedagogy and assessment program. Therefore, we will need to undertake curricular revision. Learning content should be revised. Pedagogical approaches should be made in tune with the revised curricular structure, and assessment that would help in moving towards, in terms of the multidisciplinary approach. This is what we call moving towards academic excellence. Now, academic excellence, as I indicated earlier, include 3 things. Number 1, enhancing the relevance of learning contents. This is one aspect. The syllabi has to be revised, and the contents related to these must be improved. Second element of academic excellence is what is referred to as teaching excellence. How can we ensure that the teaching learning process is improved to make it excellent in terms of imparting relevant knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values among all our students? Third element of academic excellence is, as I indicated earlier, improving the assessment methodologies and procedures. The policy talks about 3 approaches to assessment. Number one, assessment of learning. That means assessment of learning outcomes, expected learning outcomes. Sometimes we call summative assessment. This is one aspect that helps students to move towards certification and so on, improve learning process, and see how we can move forward. The second element is what we call assessment for learning. Teachers assess learning to improve their own teaching methodologies, instructional strategies, pace, styles, and so on. This is essentially what is referred to as formative assessment. In fact, the emphasis now will be more and more on formative assessment. The next element is what we call assessment as learning. After assessment, students have what we call self-assessment strategy. Can they make self-corrections? Can they do self-monitoring of expected learning outcomes and make corrections required to enhance learning? That means the students themselves will use assessment to improve learning processes. That is assessment as learning. All these are part of what we call academic excellence. The next element of policy is faculty as the main part of learning process. Faculty at the heart of learning process. It means faculty excellence is something we aim at. This would need high quality induction programs for university and college faculty, high quality refresher program for the existing 1.5 million faculty in universities and colleges, for their continuous professional learning and development. And through that, we can bring about faculty excellence for three core functions. Number one, what we call teaching excellence, scholarship, and so on. Including next one, excellence in research, teaching, and scholarship. So one important aspect of policy, therefore, is can we enhance the quality of research being done by Indian universities through the creation of the National Research Foundation, which will fund peer-reviewed research proposals and programs proposed to be undertaken by universities, mainly universities and faculty of universities and students. So therefore, the next transformative initiative relates to enhancing quality of research or catalyzing quality research and innovations. This is again a transformative initiative. The next transformative initiative we are talking about is, again, in the context of academic excellence, is utilizing technology. That means leveraging technological and digital technologies in education for 3-4 purposes. Number one, enhancing access to quality education. Number one is this. Second, improving the quality of teaching and learning process in universities and colleges and other higher education institutions. Third, can we leverage technology for continuous professional learning and development of our faculty in universities and colleges? Fourth, can we use technology to improve educational planning and administration at all levels of education, including higher education management system? Next transformative initiative in this context is changing the regulatory system of higher education. We now have a single body regulating the higher education system. Can we ensure that the higher education system have a body for regulatory functions, a separate body, maybe named as Higher Education Regulatory Authority? Second, a body for standard setting in higher education, a separate body for standard setting, referred to as General Education Council. The third body, as we have now, for assessment and accreditation of higher education institutions. What is being done by NAC? Can NAC be a meta-accreditation body, which may have many more bodies to accredit, and NAC plays the role of a meta-accreditation coordination body? Last, a body for financing higher education. All together, all these four, that is regulatory body, standard setting body, accreditation body, financing body, under an umbrella organization called the Higher Education Commission of India. This is considered to be another transformative initiative. What the policy proposed is, while regulating higher education, we want a system that is simple but tight, that not too many indicators, take a few indicators to accredit a body, regulate a body, but enforce it tightly. So that's the kind of thing we are talking, that this system will help develop quality education institutions. And in this context, technology is an important aspect as well. The next element in the context is policy is based on what you call equity and inclusion in all higher education institutions and so on. So equity and inclusion, I consider inclusion as providing access to success, not just access to facilities, and ensuring retention. Can we ensure that all enrolled students in the country will have access to success? They would attain the expected learning outcomes in the case of all students. So equity and inclusion as cornerstone of the National Education Policy 2020. Next in the case is, can we ensure what we call the support system for all colleges and universities, a quality learning environment to ensure a conducive learning environment for a support system for students, how we can do it. So an important emphasis of the policy is on what is referred to this as improving the quality of learning environment and support systems, including the healthcare systems for students and faculty. Can we attempt that? Last but not least, I talked about this. When we say continuous professional development of faculty, I normally mention 5-6 areas of action. Number one, that training is important, as we do through this program. But in addition to that, can we have faculty exposed to good lectures by experts in the field on variety of disciplinary areas and so on. Number two, can we have demonstration lessons, demonstration teaching for all faculty members, subject related, subject specific, and so on. Third, we may have virtual or in-person subject specific groups which can meet virtually or in person once a month to discuss issues related to subject areas and so on. Next, can we provide opportunities to faculty to have action research on pedagogy, curricular contents, learning assessment, and so on? Can we aim at that? Next, can we ensure opportunities for faculty to participate in state level, university level, national level seminars, conferences, and so on? That also contributes to faculty learning and development. And lastly, even international exposure to faculty, participating short-term programs abroad, customized to program on research and development, and can we do it? And that is one element. Since I have limited time, I'm not trying to say that the policy, when implemented totally, will help enhance student excellence, students capable of demonstrating the graduate attributes expected, the learning outcomes defined for all stages of education. Number one, this. Contribute to achieving academic excellence through improvement of learning contents, teaching, assessment practices. 3, achieving teaching excellence through the kind of programs we talked about. 4, achieving excellence in research and scholarship. 5, achieving staff excellence, non-academic staff in university. Can we achieve that? Next, can we give opportunities to international experience for our students and faculty? Faculty exchange program, student exchange program, and so on. Next, very important, as policy indicates, achieving excellence or quality in university leadership, college leadership, and management. You may ask me a question, what is the difference between leadership and management? A leader is one who sets a vision for your college or university, sets directions for actions during the next 10 years and so on, 15 years, 20 years. And through this, can we aim at reaching a gross enrollment ratio in higher education for the age group 18 to 23 years, 50% by 2030? That is a target. Can we reach that? So excellence in governance and leadership is extremely important thing. Management. A manager controls resources, deploys team to ensure that the proposed vision of a university is enhanced, achieved, and that becomes the role of a manager. To end my discussion, I would say, what is proposed is to implement these transformative initiatives during the next 10 years to ensure high quality higher education, to make India a global knowledge superpower during the next few years, to reach the overall vision of the National Education Policy 2020. And in this, faculty of colleges and universities have a pivotal role. And that is why policy says teachers and faculty at the heart of the learning process. So I end by saying, next few years, we invest more in faculty, more in continuous professional learning and development of faculty in each of our higher education institutions to move towards a multidisciplinary higher education institution, to implement a multidisciplinary program, to improve leadership at all levels, to enhance governance management, and these are all part and parcel of the NEP 2020. I stop at this stage. Thank you very much for your kind attention.